So we have already written, this is the first thing. I had meetings, I've had 2 teleconferences with the lawyers since they've delivered this gigantic, here it is here, I don't want to do the Epstein folder reveal thing, but this is the letter of opinion, substantial document. So the first thing that we decided to do as a matter of urgency on behalf of the people, and yes, all of these letters cost money to send and write that I pay the bills for. The first thing we have asked is in relation to how the bloody hell they came up with those figures for this compensation scheme. Because going back to 1996, the Commonwealth government, the clause in the Constitution, right? This is something that we were all talking about. And I said, my view, again, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of the situation is, and was back then, that the Commonwealth, the section of the Constitution, I've got my little Australian Constitution here, the relevant section in relation to acquiring private property and just compensation being paid for that acquisition of private property, e.g., in 1996 when they changed the gun laws and had the compensation scheme, which was fair market value and in some cases exceeded market value. Some people got more money for their guns than they paid for them back in 1996. The Commonwealth government had a table of about 320 different firearm types. It wasn't just this rudimentary list that someone in all their wisdom in the government or bureaucracy came up with to only pay according to the action of the firearm, pistol, rifle, shotgun, and how long it had been registered in WA. Not the age of the firearm. That's one thing that I want to make clear as well. The table, when it says 6 years or more or 6 years or less, is not in relation to the age of the firearm. It's in relation to when it was registered in the state. In my submission to the review, I have said this is not a just compensation scheme because firearms are not valued on when they were registered in any jurisdiction. It's an irrelevant factor. So why have you come up with a table that's, we can't find it anywhere in the Act or the regs? This is what's written. The KC has diligently gone through and well, where did they get this table from? Where it doesn't add up to what happened in history. They don't have to abide by that clause in the Constitution, is the answer that I thought and turns out to be true, which is why you would have seen in my post, it is not recommended we go to a High Court constitutional challenge in relation to the compensation scheme, because this is the nature of government in Australia, that it does not apply to the states. The way the Constitution is written, there are things that specifically say what applies to the state and territory governments. In this particular case, if you read it, it doesn't specify. And so that's how they've gotten around it in WA. That does not mean it is fair or just, because it is not. You have confiscated private property off of the people, not compensated them according to its true worth. We need information on how you came up with that, the decision maker behind that, and how it's been applied. That is something we have already written to the Minister and Commissioner about, requesting this information. We have done it as gentlemen. They don't have to reply, but if they don't, we have options to compel. I know my lawyers are probably screaming at me saying, you've lived in America too long, stop using that language, but my disclaimer says I'm not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, this is my interpretation of the conversations I've had and reading through the documents. So this is where we're at in terms of the challenging the buyback, is getting the information to see how they came up with this, because how they came up with this can be scrutinized through the legal process. So we have written to them about that already. The other thing that's part of this letter is in relation to the destruction of the firearms that were handed in the first scheme that were blown up in the desert on the September 11 last year. We all remember those disgusting images. Now, I went back and read through the Hansard. That's something that I've been doing as part of all of this work, is looking at what the questions through the parliament, what our politicians did. I have a good understanding from my connections with our allies in parliament. I went back and had a look through all the questions that were asked about firearms in the last parliament and this parliament. There were questions asked at the time about why the government thought it was a good idea to load up 30,000 odd firearms that they claimed were handed back, take them out to an undisclosed location in our state, use our taxpayers' money to buy explosives, to then blow them up while the media helicopters were flying around filming it, with God knows how many operational staff on the ground, and who knows if they even cleaned up the site. I mean, just another day in WA, isn't it, really? So this is another question we have put in this letter that we have already served to the Minister and Commissioner, and I hope they've read it, because otherwise they'll be getting a shock hearing it from me. We have asked about the decisions in regards to this, because this is not what they did back in 1996. They used crushers to destroy the firearms. We all remember those images, as haunting as they may be. The government in this state, in WA in this case, decided to use explosive to blow up our private property that they did not even pay us proper market value for. I just need to have a moment. So we have asked about that, and one thing I did point out to my lawyers from reading the Hansard is they have now written into WAPOL's procedures that it is normal procedure and operational for them to use explosive to do this. No, well, you can't. Seriously. Once again, who made that decision? Why you think that's a good idea? They were asked in Parliament about where was it, how much did it cost, and they hid behind operational matters as if they're the military invading some country. No, this is our private property you took from us and didn't pay for it. You can't hide behind that. You're meant to represent us. There's a thing called transparency. So we've asked them for that information as part of this letter, and I'm very interested to see what they've said. We have also asked for a ceasefire on destroying any more firearms that have been handed in since the compensation scheme was reopened. Because are you going to do it again, is basically what we're saying. I wrote in my submission, and I know my mate Jack Carmody did too, that we hope we never see images like that on Western Australian soil again. I mean, I thought it was actually quite threatening, and I had other people say that to me as well. Like, what a show of force by the state. Look what we can do. Look what you can't. um, the optics and you can't let governments get away with this repeatedly. You just can't. It has to be a point where we all just say, is this a joke now? Is this how we get treated? Like, please, for the love of God, this is a legitimate activity. These are legitimate tools. We are not the criminals. And we've proven to be trustworthy persons since 96, living under these gun laws, and now you've made it harder for us. No, 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 no. So that's another thing that we have asked. And the legality of that destruction, the lawyers' words. Just, you have to. So we've requested that immediate moratorium on destruction, request for disclosure of the information I've just said. And if they don't give it to us, we can go to court and request it through that process. So that is where we're at with the compensations, challenging the compensation scheme, and also making sure they do not blow up any guns. Like we just heard someone's dad had to hand theirs in. We do not want him to see them blown up on national TV when we are trying to fight this.